What's up again, everybody? We are here with some gameplay from the Italian Nationals. In fact, this is the semifinals of the Italian National Championships, and I'm hanging out with Ark, whose gameplay we're actually watching on Kano. How's it going, Ark?
Hey man, it's going great. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me for commenting this Kano versus Briar gameplay.
Yeah, in fact, you reached out to me and you said, hey, I've got some recordings of the Italian National Championships that I played in. I'd love to sit down with you because I'm playing Kano. And I just jumped at the chance because I love Kano. You knew that. That's why you reached out to me, and I really appreciate it. And it looks like you're actually starting out strong with a pitch for a reverberate, or pitching of a reverberate, so that you can crucible something that you're going to be playing.
Yes, in this game, the fact is all about being faster than Briar, which is already a very fast deck. So what I'm trying to do here is just maximize the damage output to actually try and race Briar to the end of the game.
Yeah, and we should actually set the stage a little bit as you're playing down a red Voltic Bolt, thanks to the Reverberate, allowing you to open up your hand since that Reverberate hit. Setting the stage, this is the semifinals, as we mentioned, and this is a Briar that you said that you had played earlier in the day, and it looks like that Briar is literally only running Spell Void 2 and the occasional, perhaps, Arcanite Skullcap Arcane Barrier whenever it's turned on, but again, as of right now, it's not because you have less life.
Yes, and that's very relevant for this kind of game where they do have eventually the chance to activate that Arcanite Skullcap. But since, the deck is so good at actually doing damage that they never actually have the chance to play it against me. And what the player did here is to use the Shock Charmers in a wise way to actually just cycle his hand. He pitched to cycle 2 cards out of his hand to make sure that he can improve his starting hand some way.
And he comes down with a Gorganian Tome to draw a card right off the top, which is a fantastic card. No matter which Briar version you were playing back in the day, Gorganian Tome was like a core card of that. Then he comes in after Gorganian Tome with Bramble Spark. Looks like he's revealing for the Bramble Spark to give the buff, which also, by the way, playing creates a nice little embodiment of lightning token. So this is going to do arcane damage to whatever he plays next. It's going to be attached to it, and it's going to give it go again and a buff.
+3 buff. It's a red Bramble Spark, so a lot of damage is coming my way, and it just show Channel Mount Heroic. So we know now that he's playing a hybrid version of Briar that is capable of doing massive amount of damage when the channel is set up.
Oh, is that the card that you revealed for the Bramble Spark? Oh, okay. So yeah, knowing that it's Channel Mount Heroic is a really interesting proposition here. This does, I think it's Arcanic Crackle, so it's pushing 2 different single points of arcane damage and like 6 or 7, something crazy like that, which is super gross when it also has Go Again, and he could possibly play that Channel Mount Heroic depending on the cards in his hand, right?
Yeah, that had me very worried, but knowing my opponent, I knew that he would rather push more damage through than setting up that card. And also, I think that, you don't really have time to set up the channel unless you really are in a spot where you know that it's gonna really make your turn much better. In this case, I think that I was worried, but not so much. My only worry here was just eventual draw.
Yeah.
Against this deck is what you're worried against. That's you don't want to see your opponent drawing and just starting to do these kind of crazy turns where you go with go again and arcane damage and physical damage to just output. This deck can kill half of Kano.
Yeah.
In one turn.
It really can. And that's actually kind of what we're seeing here is the damage output attached to this, because now we have a Ball Lightning. Now, the follow-up to this is likely just Rosetta Thorn or trying to like maybe Arsenal the Channel Mount Heroic that we revealed earlier. But even just pushing Rosetta Thorn after this for 2 and 2 alongside of the Ball Lightning, that's pushing like a crazy amount of damage on their first turn.
And there we go, yeah. There we see that I'm already at 18 because
I love how casually
just
you just slid the Arcanite Skullcap out there. Like, yep, this is an Arcanite Skullcap. I'll take the Arcane. And you have basically half of your life gone after one turn.
yes. Yeah, I mean, at this point, you know, I knew what was coming. I knew I had to block. I think that was a bad block. I think I was just scared to take too much damage. I think that's against Briar. I should only block the ball lining for 2 with the Skull Cup, because that would allow me to block some extra damage.
I think that's
But
wise.
always,
I think it's wise. Not only that, but I think anytime you see like a plunder run, right, you can use the equipment for plunder runs as well.
yeah, I was just nervous. I just didn't. I already got so much damage, and then after it was like, no, that was a mistake. But that's the point also of this kind of games. No, you never stop learning, even if you're playing the tournaments. That's where you actually learn.
You threw a quick Scalding Rain out there, and then were content to just draw up. You had a 2-card hand, it looked like, so you just pitched and then Scalding Rained. And he gets rid of his embodiment of Earth tokens, which mean absolutely nothing against your deck.
Yes, yeah, that's. I mean, they think those. There are some people that think that I'm actually playing the Nourishing Emptiness, and that's why they might need those. But I don't think that it's wise to run Nourishing Emptiness against Briar exactly because of this, because you'll never get it through.
That's a great point, actually. This one, I was curious if you were running Nourishing Emptiness, but in this previous meta where they could stack up embodiments, it is actually easy to dance around that Dominate, because there's nothing in your discard pile that turns off the Dominate on Nourishing Emptiness. They can just, embodiment 1 card, or even just like equipment block 1 card.
Yes, it was not a great card to play against Briar. And here, what we see is the potential of very big swings from the
Wow.
hybrid version. That's just another damage coming at me. I just take 8. I'm at 8. He's at 24, and that's not really a beautiful place to be in, actually.
Yeah, you don't want to see the Autumn's Touch that red Autumn's Touch coming down for 7, but you're content to take it here. And basically give your opponent a like 3-1 life lead, and pitching what looks like is that an energy potion to hit off the top?
Yes, I pitched an energy potion to banish the top deck. That was another flare, and followed by a Scalding Rain, both red. So that there's potential for some crazy damage here, because with very efficient resource cost.
Yeah.
And then you see that because the other flare that my opponent just read there, because of course everyone has to read Kano cards, right?
Yeah, if they don't quite know what they do, then you may have an advantage. And it looks like you're going to Crucible and then Aether Flare. So the nice, and there's the Metacarpus note as well. The nice thing here, pushing the 5 damage, is that this Aether Flare will basically pass on its damage much in the same way that your spoiler card from Everfest is going to be doing, which I'm thoroughly excited to get my hands on.
Yes, man, I can't wait to try it in the decks. But back to the game, Aether Flare is basically going to pump the next card by the amount of damage that it deals. So if it deals 5, the next card is gonna get +5 arcane damage, and my opponent knows that now, and he's really thinking if he should use the Shock Charmers to break them for the Spell Void and prevent 2 of the damage, because in this way he will be able to actually save 4 life, because preventing the next card to get an extra 2, but still the next card is going to come for an extra +3, and that's also positive for me, that I was just trying to make him actually use the Spell Void to just, after that I knew that I would have my free way to just burn it, because that's how it works, right?
Yep. Once you're able to get that Spell Void out, well, in this case, when they're only running Spell Void and not running a consistent like Arcane Barrier, now that Spell Void's out of the way, you can just calculate your way to lethal. And you had a nice little Aether Flare setup that can pass along its damage, and possibly even allow you to use Metacarpus Nose a second time if you have the resources. But no, just a snapback from Arsenal for extra damage as well, which is super crazy that you were able to just whittle down a 3-1 life lead to what looks to be virtually even at this point.
Yes, and it's a pity that I didn't have a Blazing Ether. I have to say that would have been a beautiful beautiful turn. But of course, I think this is still very good. I managed to really equalize our life total that it seemed very hard to do. But that's also how Kano works. Kano has the potential to. That's why also he starts with 30 life, right? Because it's just a different. It's not the same way. It doesn't work the same way that the other heroes. You don't have this linear damage output, but you have this kind of semi-exponential damage that can really escalate and do very explosive stuff, just like we saw now.
Yeah, that turn is a perfect explanation of how Kano can let it just kind of roll from one to the other. And you now have what is the commanding position, because when you get your opponent to about this point where it's their turn and you can possibly have like a quad blue hand and still have the Storm Striders up, you still have the Fjendal Spring Tunic up, you can basically just come in for lethal on their turn, and it's really difficult for them to calculate things out on their turn to hold blues, and for your opponent, they actually don't have any counterplay whatsoever, except for maybe you making a slight misplay and dealing them enough damage to turn on the Skullcap's Arcanite, or Arcane Barrier, I should say.
Yes, that would be the only way. And of course, as a Kano player, you have to be aware, you have to be careful, because after playing the whole game without Arcane Barrier, actually making them having less life than you and enabling them their Arcane Barrier can actually lead to potential deadly mistakes, because you do your calculation as if they couldn't block, but then suddenly they can, and that's something that it must be really stressed. That is important to not to underestimate. And here he goes.
Draws 3 cards.
Yeah, that's a lot of cards. That's a lot of cards that you don't really want to see in the hand of your opponent when you're on 8. And I think that what I had in my hand were all red cards. If I don't recall. So this is. I may seem calm from how my hands are not moving, but I'm actually really thinking that I'm gonna lose this, because this is the turn where Kano wants to win. This is, in theory, this is the turn where you actually do want to win. You use the Tunic for the Storm Striders and you Kano 10 damage, and that's it on paper. But then when you have only red cards in hand, that's another story.
Oh, and not only that, this is a turn where he has Tome of Harvest, so he's thinking, well, I'm desperate. I just need to be able to kind of push enough damage and hope he doesn't kill me. But from your perspective, you're like, oh no, I have a quad red hand. I can almost do nothing to this point on my opponent's turn because I can't pay for it. There are some weird corner cases where you can, like, I don't know, maybe squeeze a Voltic Bolt in after paying, like, the other 3 reds in your hand, and you can Voltic Bolt for, like, 5. But in this scenario, it's like, this is the worst case. Your opponent has extra cards, you have a quad red hand, and you just have to kind of block out and hope that they don't just kill you outright, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. That's what's going on in my hand. Look at my hands. I'm like killing my own hands, like, oh my god, how am I going to survive this? Can they, with 5 cards in hand, can they actually push through enough damage? Because, you know, Briar has a damage potential that's very, very high, especially when they have an extra card, and they can even potentially draw extra card because of that Force of Nature. And that was not a very easy turn to play against. Of course, the plan is not only not to die, but also try to keep some card in hand so that I can actually do something in my turn, get them a bit lower in life, and then actually go for the kill the next turn. That's
exactly right. Yeah, if you can, and that's the hard part, because sometimes I don't think you can. Like in a scenario like this, you may not be able to just keep anything in hand and come back with something. You may just have to settle for full blocking and not taking, you know, excess damage, because then you open yourself up to Rosetta Thorn, right?
Yes, definitely. That's why you have to be very wise in counting and blocking. And that's what I'm trying to do here, right? I'm trying to just, you know, trying to use my equipment as well as smart as possible so that I can spare some cards for the next turn. But I am actually ready in my head. If I have to, I will just have to block with with all my hand.
I think there's a little bit of stroke of luck here too, because he doesn't follow up like a ball lightning here with something from hand and then use Tunic Resource for Rosetta, which could have presented just like a full just toss your hand at the turn scenario. So now you're actually kind of open to just going, you know, like take the 4, the 2 and 2 from the Rosetta here and keeping the 2 cards.
Yes, at this point I was quite happy I didn't see a ball lightning. I don't know if the list actually plays the ball lightnings. I'm not sure about this one. So I was like, does he have anything to actually, I don't know, Razor Reflex to, I don't think he could actually even think about running the card. But at this point, you know, it's the semifinals, you really don't want to lose. And I was really thinking all the possible options here that could actually you know, kill me, but I decided to just go and just take the 4, go down to 3 and see if I can draw a better hand at the end of this turn and go for the heal in his turn. So in this case I managed to keep 2 cards in hand, and I think at this point I'm thinking whether I want to pitch that Zap and play the Scalding Rain. That's what I end up doing for 4 arcane damage, or if I just want to arsenal the Scalding Rain and play the Zap for 3. And I think that's also something that's very important, you know, to just maximize damage versus the cards you have. So it was tricky. Not sure if that was the right decision, but I think it does put my opponents in a tough spot. And of course he goes on answering with a
exude
beautiful
confidence, it looks like, right?
Exude confidence.
Oh, but you're very quick and assured here, it looks like, because you're just coming straight out with the pop on the Storm Striders. And is that a Stir the Aether Winds? I'm a little bit unfocused on my end as far as the camera's concerned.
Yes,
is that a Stir?
That's a Stir. Yes.
Oh,
correct.
and this is just straight up game at this point, because playing it's a red. If it's a red Stir, it's +3 damage and it's opening your hand up as well. So just about any spell at this point from your hand, any wizard non-attack can just kill.
Yes, basically yes. So it's +4 damage because
you've crucibled in response to it, so it's gonna add add +1 and the +3. So yeah, really just about anything is open. Anything that deals 2 wins you the game, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely. 2 damage from my hand and I have game, and I think that at this point is where my opponent's like, okay, I think that even Exude. That would actually, if I would let Exude resolve, would just stop me from doing this and winning. But in response, you can actually, you know, play before Exude responds and resolves and just do your Kano shady stuff, and that's what's happening here. And
it is an interesting, I will say it's a very interesting sort of pivot card for, or like a sideboard card for Kano, but in this sense, because it does force you to just kind of play everything out beforehand, but you just straight up have it, and that actually punches your ticket into the finals, doesn't it, picking up this win?
Yes, I was. That was the punch of victory on the table. I was like, yeah, let's go. And that was a great game. That was a lot of fun. And I was playing against this guy. He has a shop in Italy, and he's a very, very nice guy. I really like playing against him. And he defeated me in the road to nationals in the top 4. So I think it was like the quarter it was the quarterfinals, and he defeated me. So this was like our revenge game, you know. It was like, okay, last time you threw me out of the top, and this time I was like, I have to do, you know.
That is awesome, and that is an incredible ending to the game, to be able to kind of do it on an Exude Confidence that forces your hand. But of course, you had the damage there with the Aether Spindle at the end. Thank you so much for coming on over and allowing me to cast this along with you. If you would like to watch, everybody, the finals of Italian Nationals, I'm going to put a link into the description to where you can watch that. Head to Ark's channel. He's going to have the Italian Nationals posted up there. We're going to actually do that one next. And if you want to watch it, I highly recommend that you head on down into the description or into the top comment that I've pinned, and head over to his channel. Thank you so much for allowing us to hang out on the semifinals here on my channel.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
and boom, done.
Let's go.
Easy.
Well done.